Radhika comes with close to 2 decades of experience in WFM. She has worked in companies like Sapient, Kid India, Evit Associates, Deloitte, and now in KPMG. And Radhika is known for building WFM strategy from basic to advanced level. In fact, she has really created a seamless WFM strategy in KPMG. Right from the days that when she joined, there's nothing in place. It's all bits and pieces. She has streamlined and created kind of seamless flow, and also kind of strategy is highly commendable. And Radhika is known for very strong WFM influencer with the stakeholders, and also like she's able to build good rapport and trust with the key stakeholders, with the top management. And she's able to build WFM innovations within the organizations in the country and technology adoptions very effectively and building WFM excellence. In fact, Radhika is an award winner of best practices in WFM and also best tools in WFM in the year 2019 with the GWFM. You can see the trophies. Both the trophies were grabbed by her, where other companies were there. Despite all that, when she created everything from scratch, and she was able to build everything from zero to something that is excellence, is highly commendable. And Radhika has been a good influencer in the organization. Great to learn, and she's been a great people manager and excellent in leading a team, leading change, and also bringing in disruption in WFM. It's great to have you, Radhika, and great to learn in your keynote speech. And we have very good topic. This is need for the hour. Everyone talks about reskilling and upskilling, but what is in it? Reskilling and upskilling. How important and how organizations are really able to build kind of talent for future readiness.
Thank you, Shiva. That was a very generous introduction. Thank you very much. Great. Okay. Hello, everybody. This is a great opportunity. Once again, I have been participating in all GWFM events for the last 3 years now consecutively. So it's great to be back, and it's a great forum for great opportunity, great exposure, because there are a lot of people from very different, diverse backgrounds who come here and who present their views and thoughts. So just from a learning perspective and exposure perspective, fantastic. I'm very, very glad to be associated with GWFM. So thank you for calling me back, Shiva. So talking about reskilling and upskilling. In fact, one of the reasons why we chose this topic, or why I chose this topic to talk on, was that is the need of the hour. Like Shiva said, that is literally the need of the hour, especially in a COVID world like this, right at this point in time, where people are working from home. People need to, firms need to optimize their resources. There is low cost, there's low budgets, etc. So there is a lot going on, and how do we maximize the potential that we have is what I'm going to talk about. This is the presentation I have is very trend oriented, in the sense that it's something that we thought, we researched about it. When I say we, it's just me and a few of our colleagues together, but it's something that we've already worked on, and this is something which is, I think, we need to fair for every firm. So we put together a problem statement, just about 2 to 3 problem statements that we were trying to resolve. More about, how do we improve the skills and capacity development, which is what we already have. Okay, so the easiest thing is to go hire, but then hiring is very expensive. It involves a lot of time. It's heavy on the cost. Besides, attrition is also very high. So there is no guarantee that if you hire somebody, the person will stay for long enough. So how do you improve the skills and capacity that you already have? And how do you cross-skill people? Because that, I think, is another key thing in this time, where just having one skill is probably not enough, and probably everybody needs to do a lot more. So how do you cross-skill people, especially in the skill cluster that you're currently working on? For example, the base of the skill. For example, say if you have a I'm deliberately taking a technical skill at this point in time. Say if you take say a cloud or Python or any of those skills, what is the base of that skill? So if somebody has a base of certain skills like Java or other skills which will eventually add up to it, those are the people that you can target to, for that skill cluster or affinity skill cluster to pick and target. And then finally, create awareness. Now, it's not just enough to know skills. It's also very, very important to understand solutions or the services that others provide or what the entire firm can provide, not just within your vertical, but also across. So that is what the problem statement was. Now, what is in it for the client, for the business, or for the people, or for operations? I mean, those are the four primary pillars of any firm, right? What will the client get if you do something like that? A holistic solution, of course, because you're not just going to go to the client with say, okay, I can just solve this a particular problem that you have, but I can also help you with, suggestions which my other team members or my other verticals of the firm can solve. So a holistic solution, because it's never recommended that you go just one-on-one to sell. You should ideally go as a full team, as one brand, right? Then the deep insights, because this is what is another thing, that you may know A, B, C, D, but there is somebody else who may have E, F, G, H, I. So there is a complete deeper insight that you provide to the client versus just saying, okay, I will check and get back to you, to the client. And that's obviously not the best answer the client wants to listen to. What's in for the firm? Of course, better collaboration, right? So anything, any team working with better collaboration will always do better, will always have more success stories. Of course, cost of recruitment goes down because you're probably training more people to do the same thing in a much more better fashion. So you're hiring less, and expensive is hiring is very expensive, especially at senior levels. I mean, the amount of time spent and the overall cost and the overheads turns out to be very expensive. Of course, you get higher revenue because the client is very satisfied or is pleased with the solutions that you bring. So you get higher revenue. They will recommend you to another client and another client. This way you get higher revenue. You also get a repeat client. So the person may come back to you after more, after the current work that you've done for them. And of course, an agile workforce, because there is a lot more you can do with the same talent pool. You can move them to different skills clusters. You can move them to different projects if the talent pool is a lot more skilled in the same fashion. And of course, knowledge and appreciation of the advisory business. So which means that the consulting business, which is so dynamic, in most firms that I've seen and that I've worked in, no consulting business does only one particular type of work. Okay, they all do different types of works. The verticals are different. There is a lot of and in fact they could be completely unrelated. So within the consulting business you could have pillars which are completely unrelated, but within the service lines also you would have multiple teams and multiple solutions and verticals inside, right? So knowledge of what is the other vertical doing versus what is the other team doing and what I am doing will only enhance knowledge and give you more exposure. So that's a huge win for the firm. Our people, for what is there for our people, increase morale because they definitely feel a larger connection with the team, with the firm. They feel the firm is investing in them. There is more reason to stay back because they own the people. They feel the people are most important and biggest assets of the firm. Greater opportunities for growth. And of course, you work across different peoples or different managers across projects. Now, in consulting firms, you typically do land up working with one or two managers or leaders or partners, etc. But in an agile workforce, you land up working with a lot more people. So that exposure goes a very long way in retention of staff and in keeping high morale. So I think that is really important. Of course, it also improves fantastic feedback. great opportunity for people to learn and grow from the feedback that they have had from other people versus they're just your line manager giving you feedback. HR has a better understanding of their people. They are happier if more people give feedback at the end of the year, right? And lastly, by far the most important team that a firm can have is operations. For them, their biggest measure would at the end of the day is utilization. So utilization comes with fungibility and mobility. The more you can make your staff fungible or move them around, the better utilization you have, the lesser hiring you'll have to do. And of course, better staffing on engagements, because you know, when a client sends us requirements, we go through the skill matches and availabilities and all, but there is only a limited pool. There's only so much you can select from. But with this kind of program, your pool size becomes a lot more. It's much bigger, and there is a lot more that you can pick from. So obviously, far better experience for the client as well. Lesser conflicts and reduce shortages, because you know, in a consulting world, anybody who's worked in a consulting world will know that conflict is like the first nature. One manager will want to work with a particular staff, and that other manager will also want to work with that same particular staff, or the timing will clash and be like, I want this person and I also want this person only. How do you resolve that conflict? What is the difference in terms of resolving the conflicts? So this becomes one of the very, very important things to resolve, especially for the operations team. So this is another thing that you can gain out of it if you have done enough reskilling and upskilling for your team. But there are a lot of challenges. It's not so easy, right? It's easier said than done. To actually implement this on the floor, very hard, very, very hard, because it's a mindset issue. And again, I speak out of experience because I've worked in a lot of different types of consulting firms. Each one has their own mindset, and each one has a different style of working, different way of working, which also is quite dependent on the kind of business or the nature of the business they come from. Like a certain vertical may be okay, and they may be more predictable in terms of nature of work. They would understand that, okay, after 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, I'm going to get this work, or my staff is going to become available. But some are so dynamic, they don't know what they're going to do next week or tomorrow or today. I mean, some of the businesses I handle, they don't know, they come to know in the morning that this is what they're going to do. So it's as dynamic as that, with zero forecasting capacity. So there are a lot of challenges. So how do you cross-skill and upskill in an environment which is so dynamic, and yet predictable within the same realms of the firm? That's the biggest challenge, right? You have extremes, and then you have people in between within the same group. So your solution, while one size cannot fit all, but your solution has to be more or less a guideline which fits more or less everybody. So a few things that the few other challenges that we faced were these were more cultural related challenges, which were more mindset related. You know, there was people didn't want to share and move their staff out, because what was in it for them? They were like, why should I move my staff out, and why should I loan my person out, and why should I take in somebody else? What am I going to gain out of it? Fair question on the floor. What are they going to gain out of it? Of course, there is a very good answer to it as well, but let's focus on the challenges at this point. Giving opportunities to people who have no previous experience or partial experience, which means that while I may have done a certain certification or may have learned a certain skill, but I don't have hands-on experience on it. So who is going to take me on a project and take that risk of actually putting me on a project in front of client where I don't have that experience? So it requires a lot for the manager to say, okay, I will take somebody who has no experience. Okay, so how do you and this is not like it's some attitude issue. It's not. It is, but it's not really impractical as well. So you have to figure out a way or a practical solution which helps both. Because if your mind is so closed, then it'll never ever move, and there'll nobody be able to learn more skills. Lack of recognition. So yeah, if if I do learn and if I do upskill or reskill myself, what am I going to gain? Like in the sense that, is there going to be any recognition for me? Is there going to be, am I going to have a high performer? Am I going to become a high performer? What am I going to gain out of it? And of course, the top driven approach, that by far I think is so important, because if your leader is bought in, and if the leader feels this is the right way to do, it all falls in place. It trickles down. There is a waterfall effect is what I believe in, and I've seen that ample number of times. I've started the process in 3 different firms that I worked with, started from scratch where it didn't exist in 3 different firms now. It is not possible without top-driven approach. It's not possible and if your leadership is bought in or not. Okay, the financial challenge, that by far at the end of the day is the most important, right? At the end of the day, what really matters is what is the number at the book closing. That's what matters. So you have to revisit your budget, because reskilling, upskilling does require enough budget investment, right? It's not going to happen just free. You have to re-examine the personnel you have who can conduct this, who can roll it out, who can be there for all for managing this entire program. And then what is the split of the NFR? Now, this is something that may be specific to consulting. For example, if I'm I'm loaning in a resource or I'm loaning out a resource, what is the revenue share that I am going to get if I loan out my resource? And is that share a fair percentage, or should there be a share, etc.? So these are various questions that get asked when you come up with this process. And of course, the salary cost, because see, some people in certain sectors or certain skills may not be as highly paid as the other skills, because some are niche, some are more generic, etc. So is it fair? Is there parity? Is it okay to train somebody on a generic to niche or niche to generic, etc.? So these are some of the challenges, financial challenges. Operational challenges were more in terms of identifying the right pool of resources to staff. The mobility was a challenge. Like I said, the managers would probably be a little hesitant to take on people who are not really hands-on experience, who don't have hands-on experience. And exit management. So this is another key thing which we realize, in my years of experience, I've seen that we've often lost some very, very good knowledge just because of attrition. So there is no very smart way of retaining the knowledge that somebody was holding with a client or on a project, etc. Of course, now technology has come a lot forward, and there are a lot of tools available to do this, etc. So there is a lot of way to invest that information, but that subjective knowledge that somebody carries, that's very, very hard to transfer to anybody. And obviously the contacts and the networking, that's impossible to do that. So difference in pay skills I spoke about. Continuous access to high quality trainers. Yeah, now this is also really important, because while I may want to really train and I may really want to upskill my team, etc., where am I going to get that kind of quality trainers all the time? Because it's not like a one-time activity. It's not like, okay, one time I bring in somebody and they finish certification and that's it, it's done. It's a continuous ongoing thing. Every day we're hiring, every day people are leaving, every day people are getting promoted, every day people want to improve their proficiency levels, etc. So we have to have continuous access to very reliable, good quality skilling metrics, right? So that's the last one. And yeah, like I said earlier, agreement of sponsors and leaders, and impact of non-compliance. So impact of non-compliance somewhere is a little important to drive compliance, because most people will end up thinking, I have to do another certification and I have to do some more training hours, etc. Now, the question is, do we force people or do we give them an option? Do you make it voluntary? And if you do it, is there an implication of forcing? And if people don't comply, then what is the implication of that? So these were various challenges that we had to really go down and drill into. The last, of course, being the people challenge, lack of motivation for them. Why should I leave my domain and learn something else? Why should I do more? If I do more, I will be given more work. I will be loaded with more work. Mindset issues again, but very people-centric, aligning people's aspirations, because we have to tie this down at the end of the day to their aspirations. Everybody is into the firm for aspiration, for growth, for money, right? So everybody needs to feel that you are going to grow into this process, or you are going to gain out of it, because it's not like, okay, you come, you do your work, you go back, you log off and put your laptop off. We don't want bots. We definitely don't want bots. We want very passionate, involved, curious people, because only then you can mend, or then you can mold them basis what the business of what the market wants, right? So similarly connected is the career progression and disappropriate opportunities. Now there are a lot of people who are on secondments, a lot of people who are working on long-term projects on client sites, etc., may not have access to the kind of skilling opportunities available to the rest of the people. So that's, it could be disproportionate, So if you're going to measure them at the end of the year based on skilling, then it's again not fair, because somebody was available, somebody was not available, somebody had the opportunity, somebody didn't have the opportunity. So how do you draw a balance, and how do you define your policies based on that? Low confidence, because frankly, if I have just learned a new skill and I've just got a certification, or I've just managed to get something, but with no hands-on experience, I might not have so much of confidence to actually go and speak in front of the client, or for that matter, do something for the client, because I may feel, what if I goof up? And if I goof up, then the repercussions are big, right? So low confidence. And lastly, proficiency levels of managers to continue training them and developing their skills, because not everybody is made to be a trainer. And when I say trainer, I'm not really talking about L&D kind of trainings. I'm not talking about virtual or classroom trainings. I'm actually talking about on-the-job training, which is something which everybody lands up doing every day. But it's very hard for somebody to mentor and coach the other team members. A lot of them are individual contributors. It's easier to do it themselves versus training the others. Now, getting them to be motivated to coach the others is another challenge in itself, right? So these are the challenges that one typically faces to actually implement something which is so simple and yet so complicated, but also the need of the hour. So some of the results, okay, we brainstormed on some of the results, and this is a few things that one can actually implement it on the floor. We've done a lot of it already, but these are just high level things, and we can, of course, we went down to very great detail about it, but very high level information. So identify your hot skills, identify your demand drivers, affinity clusters. Where is it that you want to focus on as a firm, or as a business unit, or as a service line that you're working with? What is it that you want to pitch for in the market, you want to be known for, etc. So identify the hot priority skills, because that by far will define your learning strategy, without which you're not going anywhere. Create owners for them, so that it's not just one person's headache who's driving this on the top. It is the ownership and responsibility, accountability of everybody, and it's spread across the business, so everybody has a piece in the pie. And target which pool of resources you are going to invest in for cross-skilling or for upskilling, both of them. See, at times it is easier to upskill a resource, like somebody whose proficiency level may be like a beginner or an intermediate. It is better to invest in that person to improve the proficiency level to become like an expert or a subject matter expert, versus trying to cross-skill that person and teach him a brand new skill. So I mean, this is very different for different people, right? It's very subjective. It could be that like a junior new person who's willing to learn various different kinds of things, they are easier to catch, easier to mold, easier to train, because they don't have to unlearn a lot of things. And that is the challenge with people who have like lots of years of experience with a particular skill or domain, right? So that's why you have to target who you are going to focus on. Curate it. So make it scalable, figure out the path for each of the cluster. Like, what is the path, in the sense that what kind of training, how many hours, which certification, what detail of that training is that person going to be trained on or learn? Is it required? Is that going to help in any way for the projects which are in the pipeline or which is in the market that you want to focus on? So make the path according to what the goal is. Okay. Medium, so yeah, it could be self-learning, it could be firm-led, it could be virtual, and well, now everything is virtual, but if things become better, then classroom any day also can be used. But what's going to be the medium, and for which type of trainings? You will have to go down to that level, saying this can be done self by a self person, or this has to be done by a trainer led by a firm. So this is something that we need to invest in. This is something which we can have a virtual training and upload it, and somebody can do it anytime. But for a particular training, we will have to hold virtual classrooms. Okay. And of course, minimum learning goals for reskilling. So should there be a minimum learning target, then that has to be actually put down, documented, and then communicated to everybody, saying so many hours of minimum skilling has to be done by these levels or these designations of people in this group, in this duration. And that has to be constantly reminded, saying that these many hours are done, these many left, or nothing done, so many left, end date is approaching. And then there is a repercussion to it as well. But again, how much of force we apply, it also depends on what skill you want people to be trained on, versus something that and who you want the person to be trained on, like versus somebody who's a subject matter expert or somebody who's a fresher. Deploy, so there has to be a PMO, there has to be a PMO. This cannot be done by one person, or cannot be done by just an L&D team, or maybe the resourcing team or the HR team. It cannot be done. You have to have a very dedicated team working just to get a certain agenda running, which is the reskilling and upskilling thing. And it is not like a one-time thing. It is not like 6 months mein ho jayega. It's not going to be like that. It's an ongoing project, especially in these times. At least in the next 2 to 3 years, this is really, really key to bring up the talent and invest in the talent that the firm has, so that they can take the firm to the next level, without which the firm is not moving ahead. It's very, very important. Of course, there are options to invest in various platforms. There are tons of platforms available these days. There are external platforms, internal platforms, tools, etc. So there is no dearth of all of those. And lastly, sustain it. I mean, it's very easy to roll it out, very easy to do a big bang approach, but then by far the most important success measure is whether you were able to sustain it and did it bring value at the end of the day. You may have done this fantastic project where you tick marked everything. I did this, I did this, I did this. What did it come out as? What was the end result and final result? Were you able to sustain the data 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or 1 year down the line? Is your data still very reliable? Need to have a very robust repository of your skills, of the people who can do what at what level. When was it last updated? When did the person update a CV or a skill? Or when did the person last work on a particular experience in the project? Is the skill relevant? By far, this is the most important tracking. I mean, we do this tracking, that you may have 10 skills and it may be a primary skill or a secondary skill. Is it relevant? Does it make sense that I put that person just because in some form, in some time, 10 years ago, I may have learned C++, and today there is a requirement in a Microsoft project. Can I just pick up that person and put that person in the project? It's not relevant. The skill was done 10 years ago or whatever number of years ago. Is just by having the skill is not good enough. Whether the skill is relevant, whether it's a primary skill, secondary skill, how good is it, all of that matters. So those are the results. I'm not going to go on about it, and this is the final slide. Very quickly, how do you measure what you've done? Again, if you don't measure what you've done, then it's all humbug, right? It's all like, oh yeah, we worked on a project and we did something, but what did it translate into? Now that can be measured just by following these very simple measures, which are how many bench hours were spent into learning, the number of professionals who, the number of professionals skilled within a skill cluster across proficiency levels. Now, this is again important, like I said earlier. A beginner can become an intermediate can become an expert. So training somebody within the proficiency level of that skill is more important, along with, of course, a cross-skilling. But in my view, to hone the current skill is easier and far more cheaper than to do a cross-skill. While cross-skill is also good to know, good to have, but it's easier to do this way. Coverage of all hot skills that you want to target, percentage of cross-skill professionals that you deployed. So if okay, fine, I trained, say, 10% or 20% of my people on cross-skill. How many was I finally able to deploy them? Was I able to put them on any other project with that cross-skill requirement? Or were they deployed again on a different service line with the same skill they had? What's the point if I wasn't able to use the cross-skill requirement, right? Then why did I waste so much training time? So that is a very important measure. What was the budget spent, of course, the trainer compliance, and I mean, in the sense that what was the target versus what is achieved, how many people was the person able to train, etc. And of course, the joint and cross-sell. This is really, again, very important, especially at the senior level. When you go to the client, when you go to the market to sell, I spoke about this earlier, that you don't go as one, okay? You take people from different teams, you bring people from different domains and sectors, and go and sell a holistic experience and a holistic approach, not just like, okay, I'm going to sell indirect tax, and that's all I'm going to do, and I only know about indirect tax. And somebody, if they ask you, do you know anything about taxation in the manufacturing domain? I have a firm in the manufacturing domain. How do you handle manufacturing domain? Oh, I don't know, I only know taxation. It doesn't help, right? You need to have somebody from all sorts of sectors who can talk about a holistic approach and not just a particular line. And lastly, percentage of utilization of skills. That's the most important measure of all of this exercise, that what skills you're hiring for or training for, what is the percentage of utilization of the skills, not of the person, of the skills. Of course, it's measured by the person's chargeable hours on the project, but was it even utilized, right? I could be on a manufacturing project, but I could be coding for them. So what skill did I use and how much percentage of my time went into it for that project? So I'm not necessarily a manufacturing expert, but I'm a coder, but I can work on a manufacturing domain, right? So yeah, that's about it. That was my final slide. Those are the questions. If there are any, I'm happy to take. Shiva, back to you.
Thanks, Radhika, for very detailed presentation on reskilling and upskilling. This is need for the hour, and organizations to look at building internal talent or buy talent. So let's see that if there are any questions. Yeah, Radhika, there's one question where how do we measure the future readiness in the organization? For example, ready 100%, or ready 10%, 20%, or 50%. How do we ensure that yes, we are aligned with the business pipeline or future of demands, and how do we measure that internal talent is built?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. Actually, how do you measure is with a very disciplined, robust workflow of tracking your pipeline. So, for example, two things will go into it, your pipeline as well as your availability. Now, what happens is that you may put in, most firms may have like some sort of a CRM tool where, you know, they would be tracking their client management requirements. So there would be details of what the client has done or client is asking for. But how many of them will tie that to the actual availability on the floor? And again, I'm talking more consulting terms because it's very dynamic there. So what happens is that if you have a robust pool or talent tool, sorry, if you have like a tool where you track your availability, your utilization, etc., with the skills, that is how you will be able to measure it. Now, the way to do it is, for example, you have a client coming, say client ABC, okay, the client wants a skill, say Python or R. They wanted, say, they want to start a project, say one down the line. Now, if you feel that this is a potential client and the probability of this opportunity coming is reasonably high, because we do a lot of very close probability tracking as well. So if you feel that the probability is pretty high, for example, it's going to turn to a verbal commit, or we're going to sell it, or it's probability 75%, etc., then you start looking at your resource pool, where you see who has that kind of skill and or who could be trained into that kind of skill. And the base skill, people who have the base skill for that, are they becoming available in that due course of time? If not, then okay, there are 2-3 things you can do. One, you can cross-train people. 2, you can hire. 3, you can upskill your current people. 4, you can probably suggest for a start date, which is maybe a couple of weeks down the line, or maybe you start in phases, that you start with probably something that you have right now earlier, and then, you know, eventually get people who whose skills are not available at that point in time. So the role of a WFM resource or manager is so important that it's literally the backbone of the business, where you can go and consult or suggest to the business teams who are selling, or the sales teams who are selling, that, see, this is where we stand, this is our potential. We can either do it now, but with just only this much capacity, not the best talent pool we have, not a subject matter expert, not somebody who can really do it very well, but maybe do it a little later, or we can cross train, or we can upskill, etc., etc. So there is a, you know, there's a method to the madness, but you will have to have very clear a pipeline, as well as a very clear availability view of your talent. That's all, Shiva, I had.
Thanks, Radhika.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Shiva. Thanks again.
Yeah, there's one question from Anu. How do we make sure that reskilled employees succeed in new roles?
Yeah. Okay. Again, various things you can do. One is that you can probably put a few people on shadow projects without giving them utilization, because people may be wary of giving utilization credit to resources where they have to charge time to a client, but they don't really know the work very well. So in terms of experience, they don't really have that. So you can put them on a shadow project for a stipulated amount of time, like maybe a month or so, and give them hands-on training, or along with you know, somebody else, like give them 50% utilization, etc. But there is a system, or there is a process called double hatting. So you know, while somebody is working on a project, you can also extend that little bit of extra work on a different project, which is you know, we also do some revenue, we do some monetary recognition for them as well. But those are things that you can do, not just simply giving, you know, no credit, no utilization credit at all, and just doing certifications is not going to help. You need to get them hands-on experience. There are a lot of internal projects that we do which have those hot skills. So putting them on internal projects, or putting them on BD's initiatives, etc., that can definitely up their game, and they can become a lot more confident. But yeah, putting them on shadow projects always works. I mean, in my experience, I've seen it always works.
Thanks, Radhika.
All right. Thank you very much, Shiva.
Thank you so much for taking your time out for the keynote, and looking forward to having you for the upcoming panel discussion.
Yeah,
Good to have
sure.
your insight. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Please,
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.